You're welcome.
All right, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m.
Probably.
Can you all hear us okay in the audience in the room? Yep, good. Nice. All right, we'll try to keep that up. All right, so I'd like to call the meeting to order this evening, 7 p.m. Up first, citizen communication. The Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comment on items relevant to the commission not already scheduled on tonight's agenda. In accordance with the Texas Attorney General's opinion, any public comment that's made on an item that is not on the published agenda will only be heard by the commission. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made by the commission. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and will be asked to state his or her name and address for the public record. Is there anyone wishing to address the commission this evening? All right, seeing as none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is our presentation from Gordon Haas. Item 3A, which is regarding floodplain management in the development process.
I guess I have to speak up. Oh, and here's, turn it on. Okay, very good. So I am the floodplain administrator for the city of Pflugerville, and I'm also in the development engineering department. I'm the engineering manager for that department to review all new development that comes through the city that needs to be reviewed for conformance with our codes and our regulations. And I'm here this evening to talk about floodplains. What is a floodplain? It is sometimes called the Special Flood Hazard Area. That's the word that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, calls it. It's also referred to as a 100-year floodplain, which in short is a flood event that has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year, which isn't to say that it wouldn't happen just once 100 years. You might have back-to-back 100-year storms in the same year. It's kind of just rolling the dice, and does that 100-year storm come up again or does it not? And some of these graphics on this slide depict some of the concepts involved in floodplain management. You have the normal stream channel that when a flood is not going on, when there's no rainfall occurring, that the water is generally confined to that stream channel. But as the rainfall upstream increases and you have runoff, and it expands outward and outward, and the larger the rain event, then the more extensive the flood waters extend. So a 100-year event would extend outside of the floodway into the fringe areas, and if it continued to rain after that, it would continue to spread so that you might have a 500-year flood or beyond that event. And the Federal Emergency Management Agency is arm of the federal government that oversees floodplains and floodplain administration. And they use the different zones that are depicted on their maps to govern what flood insurance rates a business or a home will pay. Oftentimes people will approach the city and say, well, is my property in a floodplain? And to determine that, we use maps that are published by FEMA, which are called their flood insurance rate maps, or their FIRM maps. And there's some depictions of some examples here. On the example on the left, you've got the area that is kind of the shaded area is the 100-year floodplain. The area that is hatched in the middle is where the higher flows and the more quantity of the flow occurs. And then you have a different view of kind of the same area that just shows in blue what areas would be inundated. And flood development can definitely have an impact on the floodplain. You kind of see in the upper example that before development you have no one encroaching on the floodplain, and so the water is pretty much free to convey where it historically has been conveyed. Then you have people that come in and they want to reclaim some of that area and they want to build homes in that area. And if it's not done carefully or correctly, then you have the examples shown at the bottom occurring. They regraded on one side, brought in fill, and built homes on that side, but it's pushed the floodwaters to the other side. And so my job as floodplain administrator is to make sure that new development does not cause that to happen. You can't have areas that are reclaimed from the floodplain, but in order to do so, they would have to excavate in another area to make sure that the water can still convey through the area, that the water surface elevation does not rise. Why do communities regulate the floodplain? It's pretty obvious that we want to protect people and property. We want the city of Pflugerville to be as safe as we can, a place to live and work and enjoy. And we want to ensure that federal flood insurance and disaster assistance is available and save tax dollars and reduce the losses that occur during floods. So the city is very proactively involved in protecting and managing the floodplain. We start off by participating in FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program and their Community Rating System, or the CRS. That is not a mandatory. It's not mandatory that we participate in that program, but if we do, then our residents are eligible to receive floodplain insurance and to receive disaster mitigation funds. And the level to which we are proactive in doing floodplain management also determines the discount rates that our residents receive for flood insurance. Also, one of the other hats I wear is reviewing new developments that they proposed. We review any development that comes in that is near or in a floodplain, and we enforce our regulations. And some of the points we get with FEMA is by adopting standards that are higher than their minimum standards. And one example of that is we don't allow new homes or structures to be constructed in the 100-year floodplain. So there may be some historic structures that are already in the floodplain, but as of now, we do not allow any new development to occur within the floodplain. We also require that the finished floor elevations of the home be at least 2 feet above the 100-year water surface elevation. So you might say, but wait a minute, I thought you said you don't let them build in the floodplain. We don't. But even when they're adjacent to the floodplain, we require that their finished floor elevation be at least 2 feet above that 100-year floodplain elevation as additional insurance, because floods greater than the 100-year can happen and do happen. We also have adopted higher rainfall standards. The existing FEMA floodplain maps that are shown for the city today, like the examples I showed earlier in the presentation, use what we refer to as pre-NOAA Atlas 14 rainfall data, with NOAA being an acronym for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They keep records of rainfall that occurs over time, and they've noticed that the amount of rainfall that happens in extreme events is increasing. So what would have been considered a 100-year storm 20, 30 years ago, it's different today. For example, in Pflugerville, during a 100-year event, it's essentially over 11 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. So we now use something beyond what the current firm maps show. We use NOAA Atlas 14 rainfall data, again, the 11 inches in a 24-hour period. And because we participate in FEMA's CRS program and we're proactive in our approach to floodplain management and regulation, all property owners in the city who purchase floodplain insurance, and you can purchase it whether you're in a floodplain or not, you will receive a 15 to 20% discount on floodplain insurance rates because of what the city does. We currently have a 15% discount in place, but I just went through an in-person audit with FEMA and presented information to them on what we're doing and some of the upgrades we made, and it looks like our class is going to be upgraded, and we're now going to be at a 20% discount. I haven't received that word official, so maybe I shouldn't mention it, but I think we're headed there. And our commitment is to continue to manage the floodplain, and hopefully over time to see, I think we've been participating in that program since 2006, starting at a class 9, and the lower, a class 1 is the best, and we've gradually climbed 8, 7, and we're headed towards a 6. And so that makes us one of the best performing cities in Texas. And our commitment is to continue to to be proactive about floodplain management so that we keep the city a pleasant and safe place to live and work. And then I'll just end with a final slide of, if you have more questions, you can go to this website address, or always feel free to contact me. I take lots of citizen phone calls and calls from all sorts of directions. So, but happy to be with you tonight and happy to take any questions you may have.
I have a question. I have a question. So you said you don't build. We're not allowed to build in a 100-year floodplain new. But what if you are tearing down and building back up? Is that considered new?
FEMA has rules on that, and one of the rules is kind of the 50% rule. If your home is damaged in a flood and you need to restore your property, right? So you're going to spend money on it. One of the evaluations that we have to get involved in is working with the insurance company, and you do an estimate of what the value of the property. I, as floodplain administrator, work with their contractors and the insurance companies to determine what the value of their property is and what the value of the repairs they're proposing. If the repairs needed or the improvements desired, either way, equal less than 50% of the evaluation of the property, then they can proceed with those with proper permits. But if it exceeds the 50% value, they're required to come up to current regulations, which would mean, in this case, they're already in the floodplain, so they could stay in the floodplain, but we would have them elevate the finished floor to 2 feet above the 100-year flood elevation, which would mean building on piers or some other means of elevation.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, sorry. I have a question.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Oh, you have a question?
I was just going to say thank you.
Oh, okay.
So I believe the FEMA 100-year floodplain is adjusting to new Atlas 14 rainfall. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Sorry, I didn't know if I could. It's really hard for me to hear. So I'm
I'm
also
so
a fan
sorry.
here
Yeah.
as well. What's the timeline of that being submitted to FEMA and approved, communicated to community members?
Very good question. Thank you. So Texas Water Development Board has undertaken a comprehensive study of Wilbarger Creek. You'll know that we have two main creeks in the city. We have Gilliland Creek and Wilbarger Creek. So Texas Water Development Board, along with the city of Pflugerville and Austin and some other municipalities, conducted a detailed, updated hydrology and hydraulic study that includes the NOAA Atlas flood rainfall values. And they've completed that study. They've run it through FEMA. FEMA has basically done a technical review and approved it. But FEMA's processes take a long time. It is now with FEMA to officially be adopted and to be mapped, and our maps will be reissued. I've been told it's the Texas Water Development Board leading that process, not the city. And so they're the drivers, but I've been told it's going to be about another year and a half, and those maps will be reissued for Wilbarger. Now for Gilliland, no such comprehensive study has been done yet, but I will back up and say that anybody that proposes any development in any part of Pflugerville, whether it be on Gilliland or Wilbarger, is required on their own to update their local floodplain map to the NOAA Atlas 14 rainfall data. So I said earlier in this slide, we enforce NOAA Atlas 14 rainfall data, whether FEMA's adopted that yet or not.
Okay. And is the 15 to 20% automatically applied to folks? So you don't have to put in an application or anything?
No, you don't. It occurs just from the benefit of being in the city of Pflugerville, and because of our participation in the CRS.
Okay. And then just a note, I know, Emily, we've been chatting before, but when large developments happening and floodplains adjust and more houses are added to the floodplain, I think it'd be interesting knowing more details of how that's communicated out to folks, that they're going to, in an updated map revision, be in the floodplain, and how that's communicated out to community members.
Sure.
Probably even prior to FEMA, because then folks could interpret that their home being in the floodplain is not due to updated rain amounts, but instead due to development. So it could lead to more questions. So it's just a suggestion.
So I think question had several parts to it, but I think the main part was how and when are people notified? And so we have developments that are coming in and want to make adjustments to the floodplain. We have them do detailed hydrology and hydraulic studies. They are also then required to file with FEMA so that those get updated in FEMA's maps. So kind of right now, as we have new developments come in, we've got this development updated to NOAA 14. So right now it's kind of piecemeal. You have parts of our maps that are getting updated to NOAA 14 and parts that are not, that we want the Texas Water Development Board eventually, all parts of the city will be on that NOAA 14. But as part of that process to file to FEMA to get the maps updated, anybody within a certain distance is required to be notified by the developer. And we try to be careful in the letters to note, okay, you're now in the floodplain or the water surface elevations are increasing in your area, but it's not because of anything development is doing, it's because we're making them update to NOAA 14 rainfall data.
So as developers make adjustments to the floodplain, if they're close to creeks, they then have to adopt something that won't be mapped for another year and a half, but because they're making a revision right now, they have to adopt the more conservative
Correct.
rainfall amount. Therefore, putting more people in the floodplain, it might not be due.
It's not due to their project. In fact,
it's because they're having to adopt a map that hasn't been adopted citywide yet, but they have
Correct.
to adopt it earlier.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And as I mentioned, we do try to be real careful to say that it's not because of the project, it's because we're moving to a higher rainfall value. In fact, I mentioned higher standards of development. One of our standards is that they're allowed to increase water surface elevations because we're enforcing new rainfall on them, but they're not allowed because of their actions to cause an increase. We don't permit that.
Yeah, and I want you to maybe put a finer point on that too, right? That the new developments are required to basically mitigate any potential impact of their development. To your point is like,
yeah, they're not allowed to.
as part of their
If the
drainage plans,
floodplain
correct?
They're not allowed to make the floodplain move. Like, we don't. Okay. And you're an engineer and I'm not. Is that possible?
Sorry, I have well, I mean, we all have interests. Yeah. I'm specifically, I know that there's a map revision coming out for the Downtown East
Yes, that's
project.
Yes.
That's putting a large amount of those properties that are directly adjacent in the floodplain that were not previously in the floodplain. I was already in the floodplain.
Not again, and specifically,
I was already in there, but
you are
I'm
correct.
just curious, like, how does that get rolled out? How does the city ensure that the communication or the way it's interpreted is that this development is the reason why these folks are now in the floodplain? Just on a community, like optics.
Yes, it's a very timely question because we are right now working on the notification letter that will be sent out specifically on that project, which has specific language in it to say it's not because of what the project is doing, but it's because we have adopted a higher rainfall standard. And that notification letter is being prepared right now because we're just now getting ready to the point that we're going to file with FEMA. And in the case of that project, we filed first a tentative letter with FEMA called a conditional letter of map revision. In other words, FEMA, we're not asking you to revise the map right now, but we want you to look at our detailed study and give it your stamp of approval. And at the same time, we're sending that to FEMA to say, please look over our technical work. We're also notifying the residents saying, oh, by the way, we're sending this into FEMA.
Yeah, and just a suggestion of, I don't know if it's possible, but a community member could ask, well, is there anything that this development could do to maybe make this impact? I don't understand that they're not adding to the situation. It's because there's a larger amount of rainfall from upstream to downstream. I think it could be interesting in those situations where developments are going in directly adjacent to a creek to show, even if we increased our ponds to hold X amount, this is the impact we would have on the flood. Like, this is the most we could even pull back the floodplain. The reality is that it's actually upstream larger amounts of rain that's causing the floodplain to be what it is, to help with communications when there is a large amount of neighbors that will be, or community members that will be affected by these map revisions.
Yes, and on that project, Downtown the Downtown East project, you've got the larger watershed where when it rains and it contributes flow, and it takes a while for all the flow from all the different areas to reach, say, that specific point, Downtown East. We actually did detailed drainage analysis that showed, because it is so far down at the bottom, if you do detention and then start releasing the water, you've made it worse, because all the flow from the upper parts of the watershed have now had time to reach. Rather, it's better to just let the water go and be gone and not have it coincide with all the water that's coming down. If you were to actually build a detention basin, you make flooding worse at the Downtown East development. And we have the report that shows that. Of course, it's a technical report. Might be difficult for citizens to understand, but the concepts are there and they're solid.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for my pretty detailed questions. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Hey, bring them on.
I'm also a civil engineer, and I worked in floodplain mapping for a handful of years.
Well,
too,
good.
so.
We could have a detailed discussion later.
Thank
I
you.
had a quick question as well. You mentioned that the new hydrology studies are kind of coming out occasionally that update some of the flood maps and things like that. Do you know how much empirical data is used to update those? Are they measuring stream depths? Are they looking at what the actual rainfall events are, and then what the floodplains are with the high water marks, etc., to be able to see, okay, yeah, this is what we would have expected for a 50-year, 100-year, 1,000-year flood, and then this is what actually happened.
One, it's pretty standard when you do modeling, if you do have known historic events with known historic rainfall data, to do a dry run, to run that storm through there and to see what kind of, that you're getting similar flows to what the model predicts.
Yeah. Is that something that we do at a city level, or do we kind of rely on the state?
No, we
national
rely on
agencies?
the consultants to do that. We're kind of in a technical advisor review. We rely on the hydrologists and the civil engineers and et cetera, but we then do a secondary review of their work.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Anything else?
I am not an engineer. I just want to say thank you that you are, and that you're here, and that you're doing all of this work so that we are safe. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
And commissioners, just for your awareness as well, the plan is to continue to do these types of learning sessions on other related topics going forward. So, yeah, cool. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the Commission and will be enacted by one motion. These items include preliminary and final plats where staff has found compliance with all minimum subdivision regulations. All items approved by consent are approved with any and all staff recommendations. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If any commissioner desires to discuss an item on the consent agenda, we can pull it and move it to the regular agenda for discussion. Are there any items any commissioner wants to remove from the consent agenda this evening? All right, seeing as none, so we have 4A, 4B, and 4C, which are all approving prior meeting minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission. 4D, which is approving a final plat. 4E is for the final plat for the Lisso Track 6A. 4F is a preliminary plan for North Point East. 4G is a final plat for North Point East as well. So with that,
Move to approve.
thank you.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion approves. Thank you very much. All right, up next we have a public hearing, item 5A, and Yasmin.
Is there a clicker?
All right, good evening, Chair and Commission. My name is Dr. Yasmin Turk, and I'm the Planning Manager, and I'm here to present a specific use permit for Stonehill Town Center Tract 7. As shown, the subject property is located in the vacant parcel at 1501 Town Center Drive in the shopping center between Cowboys Fit and Home Depot. The applicant is requesting an SUP to allow for the commercial, recreation, and entertainment outdoor use within the Urban Center Level 5 zoning district. Specifically, this SUP pertains to outdoor batting cages. The request for the commercial recreation and entertainment outdoor use complies with all of the approved criteria of the SUP, and it meets the intent of the comprehensive plan and the urban center level 5 zoning district. The proposed use and layout of the commercial recreation and entertainment outdoor project of this site follows UDC 3.8.6. Staff recommends approval with the conditions listed here. This outdoor entertainment space should be limited to batting cage use. It should be screened from public right-of-way. The height of all materials associated with the SUP will be less than the height of the principal structure. The batting cage will have the location depicted in the applicant's conceptual plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there anyone in the public wishing to address the commission on this item this evening? All right, seeing as none, we'll open up for any discussion or questions. I'll also entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, no opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed.
Is this part of the existing Cowboys Fit facility, or is it like a new, separate facility?
It is a vacant parcel, but it is in that same tract that includes Cowboys Fit. If we go back to this map, you can see the location. It is where the star is between the Cowboys Fit and the Home Depot. So it's in that tract, that same tract, which is encircled in red. So
it's
it's
not-
a vacant parcel, but it'll be a part of the same development.
Okay.
How late are the lights going to be on?
That is something that we don't have information on at this point in the process. That will be something that information will be provided by the applicant at a later time.
Would this be the kind of facility where they could serve like food and alcohol, like Top Golf or something, where it's kind of like entertainment based? Or?
Yes, so there is going to be a larger entertainment center that is indoors, which is already permitted, but it would be the outdoor structure that requires the SUP to be filed to have that outdoor entertainment. That's not a part of the same classification that would be with the indoors. So this is specifically for the batting cages that would be outdoors.
So the food and alcohol part is already permitted by right. It's just the outdoor aspect that's SUP.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve along with the items recommended by staff, including the height and the screening, etc. Outdoor entertainment limited to batting cage, screened from public right-of-way, height of all materials associated with the SUP less than the height of the principal structure, and the batting cage will have the location depicted in the applicant's conceptual plan.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, I am going to make a slight change to the agenda because we had a resident sign up wanting to speak on item 6B. So I want to pull that up now so that we can give them a chance to speak on that. So we're just basically going to flip 6A and 6B. So 6B is discuss and consider an application for a subdivision waiver for the UDC.
Good evening, Chair and Commission. My name is Cleveland Rodriguez, Planner 1 with Planning and Development Services. As mentioned, this item under consideration is the subdivision waiver for the Rigid Black Hawk Phase 2 preliminary plan. The request is to not connect to the street, connect a street which is Gate Dancer Lane that is stubbed into the subdivision boundary as is required by the UDC. A little background about this particular subdivision. The Rigid Black Hawk Phase 2 is located in the Pflugerville extraterritorial jurisdiction as part of the Lakeside Mud 5. It is located east of Hod Lane and east of the Rigid Black Hawk Phase 1. Row Lane is proposed to be extended further east along the north boundary of this subdivision. This 250-acre subdivision is proposed to have 634 homes to be developed in 6 phases. The preliminary plan is currently under final stages of review. Here we have the request. As you can see, Gate Dancer Lane stubs into the subdivision boundary at lot 44. The code intends for the lane to continue into the subdivision, thereby increasing connectivity and easy access for safety. The specific code in the UDC 15.16.3.c, all streets that are stubbed out into the subject subdivision boundary shall be extended into the subdivision. The applicant has proposed to convert the intended public right-of-way into a public access easement, with entry restricted to emergency vehicles by way of a fire access gate and a Knox box, and is as well as increased pedestrian connectivity. Increased local connections are important as they provide easier routes for travel within the immediate area and reduce dependency on our arterial system. Row Lane is a major arterial road. When fully built out, the number of vehicles on that particular road will also increase. While this does not impact Rigid Black Hawk Phase 2, particularly because there are multiple ingress and egress points, they may pose a significant challenge to Row Lane Estates because there is one point of entry, and if any emergency occurs, then that particular entry will get blocked. Staff determines that there is no obstacle or special conditions that prevent the code from being met. Further, added vehicular connectivity is in the public interest and will allow us to remain equitable to the new subdivisions coming into the city. This connection will provide easy access routes to the subdivision and locations further east and south, while providing enhanced access to the emergency services. Hence, staff recommends denial of the waiver. I am happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well to answer any questions.
Thanks. Before we go into the conversation, I would like to go ahead and have that resident come forward if you don't mind. Beverly Taborski.
Is it possible Mr. Teeman goes before me and I follow him up, or I'm happy to go now?
I'm sorry, I couldn't. Oh, is there someone else? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't realize he was presenting. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
And if not, I will go. But if
No, that's fine. Sorry, I didn't realize he was planning to speak.
Sorry, I was hiding back here.
No problem.
Can I just click back and forth? Okay, great. Okay, good evening. My name is Matt Teeman. Commissioners, good to see you this evening. As Cleveland said, this is Ridge 2 at Blackhawk. It's part of Lakeside Mud 5, which is part of a consent and development agreement for an ETJ Mud. Okay, one of the things that I think is important to discuss here is that because we have a development agreement in the ETJ, we go through dual review, Travis County and the city of Pflugerville. Okay, so a lot of times the city's ordinances and Travis County ordinances will conflict. Okay, but a lot of times, and there's no formal agreement between Pflugerville and county that they follow, so we go to one, then we go to the other, and we kind of go back and forth. A lot of times what happens is if there's a conflict on something, generally speaking, if it's a road or a drainage issue, the city will cede to the county, and if it's a water, wastewater, building permit, parks thing, that cedes to the city, okay? And that's just kind of like the general way it's happened over the last 25 years. Okay, so I'm kind of setting that stage for you. The EST, one thing that's not in here in kind of the overview is that ESD2, the fire service provider, has cleared all their comments on a preliminary plan. So they've said that, hey, we're okay with the emergency only access box at the end of Gate Dancer. Also, Travis County has cleared the comments as well, and they are awaiting Pflugerville's approval in order to issue the variance. So they basically said, we're okay with it, but we don't want to proceed until Pflugerville because you can get into a situation where they're not in sync and, you know, it creates issues. So I think the variance is appropriate in this case. If you go to this bullet. This is from the UDC. They're actually ABC. Okay, so in this case, condition C is the bottom, and it talks about an undesirable condition, and it's in your opinion that would be contrary to public interest. Okay, so the first thing is, kind of go back here, the Gate Dancer's in blue, you can see it. So Gate Dancer in that subdivision was platted in 1993. That road was probably built then, and it's had, I don't even think it's been repaved since 93. It's 20 feet wide, they're acreage lots, and there's no sidewalk. Okay? Additionally, at the end of Gate Dancer, it looks like a cul-de-sac is there, but if you actually get in the tax records, it has Gate Dancer stubbed out. So all these folks that are here from Related Estates bought their house under the assumption that that was a cul-de-sac, and it's in fact not, and they're finding out. And there's no, like, usually at a stub street, you have like a barricade up, you know, you have a temporary turn on this barricade. There's no barricades, there's no indication that's a stub out, okay? So if there's no sidewalks, if you make the stub out, it's going to increase traffic. You're going to have construction traffic. You're going to have big trucks coming down. It's going to tear up the street. Additionally, you have more people walking and more traffic. There's no sidewalks. Now you have a health and safety issue that you're creating by connecting the stub. And additionally, I think that these folks that are here to speak can attest that they bought under the assumption that, and they paid the price they paid, assuming that that was a cul-de-sac. Okay, I also think that this variance is reasonably appropriate to grant because, like I mentioned, ESD's cleared the comments. The other thing that's kind of interesting and unique about this situation is although we're following the Pflugerville UDC, no matter what happens tonight, Travis County is still maintaining both of these roads. So, and since Travis County has said that we're okay with this, I would ask, since they're going to be the ones that are maintaining it, that you would please follow in their lead in granting the variance. And then last, or not last, but second to last, I think it's economically inefficient, quite frankly. Like, if you look at the yellow road that's adjacent, that's running north-south, or I'm sorry, not yellow, green road that's running north-south, that's a minor collector, okay? And that's connecting to Roe Lane. The residents of Ridge can simply go to the green road, go north, and go to Roe Lane. They can come south. If they go through the Gate Dancer, like, there's maybe 20 or 30 houses that are using Gate Dancer. And then when that happens, when you open that up, you're going to have a lot of construction traffic and it's going to wreck it. So like, I just ran some back of the napkin numbers. I mean, it would take those people in Ridge and Roland Estates like 5 years of paying county taxes to repave that road. Like, that's a steep price to pay for the connectivity and having to go back to Roe Lane. Then I would also respectfully disagree that this increases connectivity. I mean, you can look at the map and see the Ridge 2 residents have options to go north, south, east, and west. They have to take almost the same amount of turns. And then the Gate Dancer folks would have to take the same amount of turns to get to another arterial. And furthermore, they don't want the connection, which I know isn't a good reason to not stub it out. But that would be, I mean, I would say just, I don't think that there's a public interest in this particular increased connectivity. So I guess in summary, ESD2 has approved it, Travis County has approved it. I don't think there's a big increase in connectivity. I think it costs the taxpayers and you more money. And I think that we can accomplish a good subdivision with great emergency access without having to grant this stub out, accomplish the stub out. And we're still going to do the emergency access. So if Roland Estates is blocked, if Gate Dancer is blocked, the fire truck can come through Ridge 2 and get to Gate Dancer. That's not an issue. And that's it. It's a lot. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Or we can, Chairman, and we can let the residents talk and I'd be available.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, and then we can cover any other questions or comments at
Good evening. My name is Beverly Taborski, and I'm here tonight representing the Roe Lane Estates HOA. Our small community is asking that you grant the variance that Travis County and ESD2 have provisionally granted, correct?
They've approved it pending their approval.
A variance does not set precedents, it makes an exception for a unique problem or issue. The issue we need help with is excluding our street from possible overwhelming traffic that will occur if Gate Dancer Lane is connected to the planned Ridge of Blackhawk that will soon surround us. Gate Dancer is a small, minimally improved country lane that does well with our local traffic and family use. It is narrow with an L curve and does not have a shoulder or sidewalk and will not safely support anything other than the local use it has now. We also have no streetlights, and the possibility of more traffic is making us extremely concerned. The knot gate that is planned for emergency access is a wonderful compromise for Gate Dancer traffic to stay low and for emergency vehicles to have a back way into the new development in case another entrance is blocked. Our community has been in place for decades, and while we know progress is going to happen around us, we would like to minimize its impact on the quiet life we have on our street at this time. Please grant this variance in conjunction with the county and the ESD. They saw the need for it, and we are hoping that you do as well. I do have several families with me tonight. If anyone's here from Roe Lane Estates, could you just kind of wave or stand up and say hi? We did take time out to come here and speak and try to appeal to you guys, and some of our families have been there for decades. Some of us have only been there for a few years. One of us is building right now. Please think about it. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you for taking the time. All right, commissioners, comments, questions on the item?
So yeah, my question is, it sounds like the county, so the developer maintains it, the developer builds, the county maintains it. In doing so, the road, it's expanded into its width to accommodate 2 lanes, and then they're going to put a barrier, emergency access only, so that to go where it says, right, so right at the end there, the only traffic can get through is emergency vehicles?
Yes.
So there'll be like a arm gate or some sort of
Yes.
something or other?
It will be just an arm gate with a Knox box. Again, specifics will be decided in the future, but it will be accessible to emergency services.
Okay, and so I didn't catch the name of the small community on Gate Dancer, but it sounds like they're supportive of that? Is that?
We want the gate, we don't want to connect.
You want the?
Don't want to connect it.
Okay. They want the way. All right.
We have 11 houses on Gate Dancer Lane.
Right. But so the way it was presented was the road will be improved,
No.
and then there'll be a.
We've been told that the road is not going to be improved at
Gate
all.
Dancer is not.
Okay.
What
Thank
entity
you.
is responsible for maintaining Gate Dancer in its current neighborhood?
Travis County is responsible for maintaining the existing Gate Dancer. That's not the responsibility of this developer. Only the developer goes to that bold line that you see on the map there.
So of course Travis County is supportive. They don't want to pay for repaving that road.
So the arm is, they're paying for the arm and they're paying for the Knox box. And only emergency vehicles are going down that road.
Yes. But
And
it
then-
will also allow for pedestrian movement.
Pedestrian
Yes.
access. I mean, yeah. You don't want,
Yeah, that previous waiver with the is gone, right? We're not talking about anything but this one thing. We're not going to get rid of any of the pedestrian access or trails like we talked about before.
Yeah, this is specifically just whether or not to have them follow the existing
Okay.
Pflugerville
so this
rules
is
where
this
they would
is a
have to complete
narrower
the stub out versus.
and it's a good.
Mhm.
Honestly, I think it's a pretty good compromise too. There's emergency access.
is there a way to get streetlights on that street?
I'm sorry, couldn't.
They
Is there a
don't-
way to get streetlights on that street?
Sounds like it's a county thing.
On the existing Gate Dancer, is that your
Yeah.
question?
Oh, yes,
Commissioner?
sorry, yes, that's my answer.
That
My
would be a question for Travis County.
That's Travis County, okay.
So sidewalks, paving, and street lights. That's all the county,
Yes, ma'am.
and they don't want to do it clearly.
Right. And will there be like some kind of pedestrian light, a street light at Gate Dancer, just so?
Within this development, I think the developer will answer better. Will there be any sort of street lights at the connection.
And so generally that'll happen during the construction plan phase. I mean, that's, to be quite honest, at like the corners, there's usually a street light. Will there be a street light set back, kind of overlooking their cul-de-sac?
Yeah, kind
I
of
don't
just
know.
like, you don't know.
I mean, that would be, I mean, honestly, we're trying to be respectful to their community. We're surrounding them. So in that case, if that's their desire, maybe, but if they are not in favor of that, then
Got you.
that would be kind of the way we would take it.
So, in an emergency, I think I'm missing the part with right there. Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, Gate Dancer has one entry, one exit.
Yes.
So in a reality where there's some kind of emergency that blocks the exit out of Gate Dancer, I'm assuming that emergency services would come out and open up that arm so folks could leave from their side as well.
Yeah, like, is this going to make it better both ways? Because that's kind of my question too. Like right now,
Does it only open for
Right now there's only-
Blackhawk and not for Gate Dancer?
So row lane is going to be constructed as a major arterial, which also increases the number of vehicles on this road. So with the entrance, which is right closer to on your left to Gate Dancer Lane, if something happens there in the future, there is only one entry and exit point. So they will have.
So like if an accident happened or there's
so they
some
would
kind
have
of
to go
emergency.
through the entire subdivision and wait at the Gate Dancer Lane, open the box and get in.
Okay, and
Which
we'd
is-
be able to like plan that to say if something happens here, the fire department or whoever would know they have to go to that gate arm and open it
Yes.
for folks to be able to exit
Yes.
from Gate Dancer
Yes.
out. Okay,
So emergency will have to open the gate. They wouldn't be able to get out.
I think it's reasonable. I was just going to say, I don't know if you have any more questions. I think this is reasonable. I feel like consistently we really encourage more connectability as a planning and zoning commission. But I think this is a reasonable, from my perspective, a reasonable compromise that is a good solution for this area. And I do empathize with looking at the maps right now, not looking at what it is in the future, but looking at the aerial. I do empathize with the community, and I think it's gracious of them to give this as an option.
So
you said it well.
I just want to clarify
does the
what
city-
we're voting on, right? So, and apologize because I'm not quite following along. So, there's the road as it stands today, right? That's what it is.
It is what it is.
The variance request is just the arm.
Yeah, it's
Has nothing to do
basically-
with changing the road width or any additional things, right?
Yeah, their road would remain as is, and they wouldn't basically have it as a true connection point to this development. They would just be an arm there for emergency services. That would be a Knox box. That
Right.
yeah.
So that's the variance requested, and then the city staff is
rejecting it.
is
There was a-
recommended denying that
Yeah.
request.
Yes.
So what's the grounds for that?
Yeah.
The grounds is that we want multiple points of access within the city as stated by the UDC, but also going forward, we feel that this may set a precedent coming into when other subdivisions are coming into the city.
Okay.
So
all right. So that's the root of it. So back to the connectivity thing, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we've talked about for the last 5 years I've been here is trying to connect communities to each other, right? Because while we have, in this instance, landowners that have been there a long, long time, the next landowner that comes along may, if this property is is it annexed in the city right now? Is this city?
no, this is all EDG.
Outside.
No, it's still
So,
ETJ,
yeah, so in
but
the
we have
event-
a development agreement with them, which is why they're
Right.
following city
So,
rules. Yeah.
so I imagine a future landowner comes in and says, well, my property value would be significantly increased by having 2 lanes with a sidewalk on either side, right? Like that's what we're all striving for and achieving, right?
What's
And
road loop 20 years ago?
Right. This road. Yeah, we've been through that before, right? And so I think I guess for the city, what's the if can we put a time limit on the Knox box, right? And say, it's up for 10 years or 5 years or 2 years, and once the sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reach a certain substantial completion, then that goes away and now it becomes a through street.
So you
there
want
is-
you don't
No,
want
that would be,
I'm confused what the
So-
HOA doesn't want.
They don't want
So-
a through street.
Yeah.
They don't want a through street.
Yeah.
So the gate and the knock box are fine by them.
They're fine with the
Okay.
Knox box.
It's
I
the,
was very confused.
Oh, wait.
It
So,
sounded
okay, let me clear this up. So, a motion to approve what was just presented means that the stub will remain a stub and it will have the emergency access only.
Right.
So approval means it stays exactly the way it is today, basically. Where it's a dead end.
No arm and no knock box.
Well, they have to do that anyway for fire code.
But
So that's not really even.
doesn't approval?
It's just a matter of whether or
Can
not
you
we
go back to
require
the
them to
colored
connect the
lines?
roads or not.
I thought approval meant that blue line would be there, but there would be an arm.
No,
Okay,
no, no.
so it-
Well,
yes.
well, yes. Approval.
Yes.
Approval is yes.
So-
that it's a
So
dead end.
regardless of whether we approve or deny, that blue line looks like that. It's whether or not cars can
Cars can
drive
go
through
through.
it.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes.
With no improvements.
And I understand not wanting to set a precedent here because I don't want to, because I'm really big on connectivity, and I like my pet peeve with the old neighborhoods in Pflugerville is how you have to drive out of the neighborhood and go around and come back, and it does kind of blow my mind too. Like, why would you not want more than one way out of your own neighborhood? Because that's what I like about my neighborhood is I can get out on 3 or 4 different streets, so I'm not stuck in traffic. And that said, we, the city of Pflugerville, are not maintaining this street, right? And
Yeah.
there is still going to be a stub put here. There's going to be an arm to discourage traffic. And the connectivity is going to come from Row Lane and Speedle and the 2 green streets. So I do think, given that this particular neighborhood has a no streetlight, no shoulder, no sidewalk road that we are not maintaining and improving,
I mean, I think
the
on
infrastructure being there and having emergency access is going to improve safety for the people who currently live on Gate Denser Lane, frankly, because right now I wouldn't want to live there because I'd be scared. Like, there are a lot, because there's only one way in and out of your neighborhood right now, and if something happens at Row Lane and Gate Dancer, you're kind of up a creek. No, there's more than one way in and out.
I think using that same using that same logic though, and they even said in the presentation, most of the folks in this new development will use the minor collectors for the neighborhood, and so I think they said it even themselves that this, even if this is connected, it's not likely to get much traffic because if you look,
Why
there's
would
really
you
only
drive
like
on Row or
10 or
Speedle?
15 houses in that corner where it would actually maybe save them some
So
time.
if we approve this, what we're saying is we're going to deny the people who live in those 4 or 5 new houses from being able to take this other way?
I mean, yes and no, but to your other point, it also, now we just have a dead end between 2 neighborhoods for a problem that Travis County will eventually have to solve for.
And then what's the timeline on annexing, right? Because I know, does it take 51% of residents to choose to be annexed, something like that? Like that's for the future.
Yeah.
But in the event that the Gate Dancer Street gets annexed into the city, right, becomes city, annexation or whatever, then what happens there?
Gate Dancer in its existing configuration, the existing properties along Gate Dancer, that requires the request of the property owners to come in, right? The MUD is under a different, through the agreement, and is a much longer term agreement through strategic partnership agreement with the developer. So Gate Dancer, at whatever point in time the property owners would like to request annexation is at the point in time in which they could be annexed.
And if that happens at some point in the future, right, we got to imagine 100 years from now, then does the gate arm then get resolved and removed because now the city is responsible for that road? The city the road has to be improved to meet the city standard at the time, or does the arm, the access arm, stay effectively making this a gated community?
Well, it wouldn't be a
Anything
gated
is possible
community
at the
because
time,
it's only at one end, right? And so you don't have to go through the gate to access the community. So it's as proposed, it's for emergency access only, and to really divide kind of the existing more rural nature of Gate Dancer. And so at some point in time, whether it's a year or 100 from now, I think that's another conversation for that point in time between the city and Travis County at the point of annexation as to the improvements to the road that would need to be made. There's not curb and gutter there, sidewalks, streetlights, things like that. At that point in time, I imagine there could be a conversation with an HOA, should you approve the variance, with the HOA at that time to say, hey, now that this roadway is improved and it's not the rural nature, we would revisit the variance request to eliminate the arm and have the same kind of public conversation.
But that would have to be initiated by them.
Property owners, of course.
At some point. Yeah.
So just to make sure I understand this, the request is being submitted by the developer to have this variance. The residents of Gate Dancer are supportive of the variance, and the city has rejected it on the grounds of just
Connectivity and precedent.
connectivity. And so the city's goal is to make it a full connection without a barrier.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And there's at no point in the future an opportunity for recourse to remove, like the city, until that area becomes annexed, the city doesn't have any recourse to change that and make it a fully connected street.
Right. This is the city's chance to do that if we're going to do it. If there's going to be connectivity, this is the opportunity. Because the developer is beholden to the development agreement right
Understood.
now. Yeah.
So, all right. So now a question for commissioners, right? Along with the historical activities of this commission in connecting communities, which ultimately have a positive impact in as broadly stated, the city also supports connectivity because it has a positive impact on transit and travel and et cetera. Then why, what would stop us, like, are there any objections here as to why we would compromise for a gate when we could have a through street?
I would argue that is the standard that we've held everything else that's come in the last several years, as far as I can remember.
Say it again. Say it again louder, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, I would say that I don't recall in the last few years the commission ever not requiring a stub to be connected to its neighbor. So this would be a true outlier, I think, if this gets approved this evening.
Would this be the first one?
I think there was one at off Weiss.
I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I just don't recall anything in the last couple of years, at least.
No, we didn't approve that one. Never mind. Yeah, we haven't.
I think, Commissioner Crane, this might be the first one. However, I'm also trying to think of a similar circumstance in which that this would occur, right? You'd have this upgraded, improved road connecting to such a rural, like that. That's, I think, where I'm hearing the challenge of the commission, right? I can't think of one that's a similar circumstance.
That goes from a 40-foot wide or whatever easement all the way through, and then right up to a 20-foot. You have to funnel that down.
Yeah. How far out are we from that part of Row Lane going to connect to Melbourne?
Can you repeat that?
How long is it going to be before that Row Lane extension happens?
The developer's working on Row Lane.
Okay.
I have an answer for that.
You have an answer for that?
We did have conversations with Williamson County and Travis County, and I believe that section of Row Lane is under review right now.
Under review, it's designed and it's under review for when they're going to do the construction?
Yes, it's in preliminary. It's in the preliminary stages, but it's going to be built in stages.
Okay. Has funding been allocated to it?
Am I right?
We're actually about to be done with our construction plans for Row Lane, and the funding is us. So
yeah,
it's been allocated as far as I know.
Yeah, I think this is a really unique circumstance, and I think my personal desire for personal and Aspire 2040 desire for connectivity, a lot of it is addressed by Row and Speedle. And then I think having the actual pavement on the ground between Gate Dancer and the neighborhood, having the infrastructure there so that if in the future they change their mind, they can get rid of the arm. But in the meanwhile, we've got the arm there to discourage the traffic on the road that probably truly can't handle it. And I'm inclined to, in this one case, I I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, no,
Wait,
so
can I
Nope,
ask
I'm not.
one
I
follow-up
want to have
question?
it on
Okay,
that.
yeah,
Though,
yeah.
On that though, I feel like there should be a time component because I can imagine 20 years from now the same commission having to deal with this a
People
scenario.
being stuck
Well,
in
no,
the
not just people. I'm
neighborhood
saying
and not
that
going through
the challenges that we faced in prior issues that are similar connectivity. Right?
when people come in to
where-
complain about
where
the traffic.
residents-
You mentioned Row Loop, right?
where,
Yeah.
where property
that's the
owners
closest thing,
have become
right?
accustomed to an existence, way of life,
Yeah.
right? And then there's communities that are built up around it who have the same right and access to travel on public roads,
Yeah.
right? And then there's a small group that says, well, that's our road. Well, no, it's now you're in the city. So is there an opportunity to put a time bound component, either of actual years or upon annexation into the city, the gate goes down?
I would imagine the conversation would happen naturally upon annexation, right?
I
mean,
mean,
it
there's
would
a
be-
lot of assumptions that could be made, and I imagine that doesn't occur for another 30 plus years.
Right.
So none of us
Will be here.
around here. Maybe Cleveland. We'll
Oh,
leave that.
maybe Kristen.
Or Kristen, yeah.
I'm sorry, I want to add on one more thing. So, you mentioned Row Loop. So, Row Loop's restrictions expired. The Roland Estates, it's deed restricted. Roland Estates is to no less than 2 acre lots, and those are automatically rolling over. So, the likelihood, and it prohibits commercial also. So, I think the likelihood of it rolling over into becoming commercial or something else like that, I think is less likely than Row Loop. And also,
Yeah, I don't think we're concerned about commercial. I think we're just concerned about residents being
Right.
tired of not being able to drive
Sure.
there because
Right.
there's an
And
arm because some
15,
people
20
got
years
upset.
from now, people are still looking at a dead end there. Right.
Yeah, and I think the distinction, I appreciate that, thank you. On the distinction issue, so what's it, more than 10 acres, you can develop multifamily, right? If you have associated more than 10 acres, then, you can develop single-family residential at 7,000 square foot lots or greater, if I remember correctly. And that was one of the challenges. We had an applicant come forward in that case where they had acquired multiple lots that had met the minimum threshold for single-family residential development, and they, as an independent developer, wanted to develop those lots and then start moving forward. And that was what triggered a lot of it. But then so that's just one instance, but through the years of being on this commission, I've had the privilege of this service. The thing that we hear constantly, I mean, Steed's Crossing, right? Everywhere is, oh, well, there's too much traffic, and I don't want my existence to be impacted by additional traffic, right? But then the city is then solving to create roadways that serve a significant number of people, as opposed to excluding or limiting roadway access because a small number of individuals who are impacted, right? That's not to be discounted. Don't want their road changed or any way, but which is also respectable. But on the commission, we have Aspire 2040. We have a team of staff and team that are focused on making things connected. And so I think in this instance, I think a gate arm is an appropriate compromise for the time being. But I do strongly feel that there should be some sort of time-bound component that limits the years, or that's upon annexation or upon substantial completion of 90% completion or 80% completion of the new development. Then the arm comes down, and that roadway then becomes the access point, an additional access point to have more connectivity. Right? That's just follows in line with.
I don't know that there's a mechanism for us to do that, because I think that'd be probably a separate agreement, I would imagine.
Just thinking out loud,
Yeah.
is potentially reconsideration of the variance at such time Lakeside Mud 5 is annexed. Both requests are tied to the mud. At such point in time, it will be at least 30 years until that occurs, right? And at that time, the conditions for Gate Dancer may or may not be any different. And when we're looking at annexation of a mud, we do evaluate infrastructure, utilities, those kinds of things, and we could, I think, a condition to reconsider the connection at that point in time would be appropriate.
Okay, so that would be when the bonds are
When the
paid
bonds
off.
are paid off, development is completed, bonds are done, we go through all of the utilities, infrastructure prior to annexation. Both are tied to this development. I'd hate to put that on anything to the west on existing Gate Dancer Lane, but I think that could be appropriate.
Yeah, I guess I just, where I'm at right now is I can't in good conscience have two neighborhoods next to each other that can't visit each other, that can't be connected.
Right.
I think about the residents that are own property on both sides of that gate right now, and 10 years from now, and it's still a dead end. I can't get over that. We have two neighborhoods that abut each other, and I'm empathetic to the homeowners here, and I get it, and it's an unimproved street. That's going to have to be addressed. That's a problem that I think, quite frankly, I think the city of Pflugerville needs to work more closely with Travis County on these types of situations. And that's, again, it will have to be a separate conversation. But yeah, I can't get over the fact that we're going to let
I would
two
like to just
neighborhoods
point
not
of
be able to
order
connect to each other.
that Travis County needs to work more closely with the city of Pflugerville.
Sure.
Like, it's not for lack of trying on the city's
We
part.
all coexist in the same region. Yeah.
Well, so we have
Wilco's right there too.
We have
so.
like multiple layers here, right? So we have
Yeah.
the MUD that is in the development agreement. They're going to have bonds issued, right? So theoretically, there's an end to that development at some point off in the future, right? So theoretically, that's a time issue. But then we have the city of Pflugerville's current stance, the staff stance, which is this does not promote connectivity according to the Aspire 2040 plan, which is the plan that we all worked hard on, right? And then we have the developer and the residents who are supportive of the variance to add the gate. And so then the question is, how do you marry those either now, like tonight, or at some point in the future to accomplish the through goals of all, right? And so I think if there's a way to say, well, once let's say, either at the first of the MUD being annexed, or at the request of the MUD or the development or whatever, then the gate arm issue would be readdressed. Because, just off the top of my head, there's, let's call it, what was the total number of sites, of home sites?
634.
634 homes compared to how many in the Gate Dancer Street?
I believe 11.
11, right? And so then the question is, well, is there an accessibility difference between 600 plus property owners and 11, right? So where is the breakdown between accessibility that serves ultimately all, right? Because while there's 11 on the Gate Dancer side and there's 600 plus on the development side, at some point the road serves all 611, right? And so I think the gate, if there's an opportunity to take it away, great. But if it's into perpetuity, then yeah, I wouldn't support a perpetual service gate, right? And that's where if I look back at the way that we've historically discussed accessibility and mobility here in this commission, that's where the hang-up is. So I would support the variance request with the addition that once the development at the first of completion and annexation of the MUD and the development, or at the request of the development once it reaches, say, 50%, then the issue can be brought back again and then readdressed. That makes the most sense, because I can't imagine, to your point, that we have two neighborhoods that if I live over in section 6 on Gate Dancer where the blue line is, to go see my neighbor that's my backdoor neighbor, I have to drive all the way out and around.
You could walk.
I could walk. What if I was able to move furniture?
What if it was a train? Would a train?
A train would help, but I don't think it's going to be economically viable here.
I have a question. And apologies if this has already been answered, but has there been any type of study or analysis to determine exactly how much more traffic would be expected? No.
None that I'm aware of, but I believe each one of our subdivisions that come into the city require a TIA, traffic impact analysis, but I do not have the answers on what's on that report right now.
And then I guess a second question would be, like, if it was stubbed out and we found like just the roads couldn't handle the large amount of new traffic, like would the city then come in and help? No.
It's the county. The city's not responsible. That's kind of where I'm stuck. Is
Okay,
that it's not a city maintained road.
Okay.
So I guess in terms of next steps, right? So if we approve the variance and the gate arm goes in, if this commission decides that we want a through street, no gate, is that also decided tonight, or does it have to be denied and then they come back and try again?
So that would have to be decided tonight whether we want the commission wants to give them a through street or just a pedestrian access with an emergency entrance. That would have to be decided tonight.
Or the third option is no through, correct? Or is it the
No.
through already happened? That's no problem.
So my understanding is that the pavement part is going to happen. It's whether or not there's an arm there.
I don't know if that's necessarily a given, right? Because fire
That's-
wouldn't necessarily mandate that it be paved,
Oh, really?
right? It could be.
It's emergency access, so it has to support the weight of the fire truck. So there is a level of pavement required in order for it to be an emergency access.
So there would be some sort of pavement between the two neighborhoods. So it's
Which is kind of even worse because then it's already paved and there's a gate.
So right. So we're not. So this isn't going to be dead end or stub. It's just is there going to be an arm or not? Because we're not maintaining the county road, the county street that it connects to. So regardless of the quality of the street the developer puts in, it's still going to go into this county road that hasn't been maintained.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I do understand connectivity and I'm all for it, except for it would be nice that not everything was so cookie cutter. And the fact that they have 2-acre lots, they bought it in Pflugerville because they like Pflugerville, or hopefully love it. And
Like
so,
we do?
Like we do. So I'm totally pro the ARM and the Knox box because they bought those properties for their enjoyment, not for lot 45 and 43 to get to HEB faster. So
Right, but that's a really high burden to reach, right? Like you have to. That's just a very high burden to prove. I think so the connection happens no matter what.
yes, yes.
The connection is there. The commission decides whether the gate comes across or no.
Okay.
Sorry, one last, well, maybe not one last question. For me, I think one last question. So I know we have HOA and neighborhood representation, so obviously a majority, at least of the property owners, are supporting this variance. Was there any vote or any community member that wanted this connectivity, or is it a unanimous HOA support letter?
It was a support letter from the HOA president.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which could be majority or, yeah, so it was not unanimous. Okay. I mean, I'm ready to make a motion. I don't know if anyone else.
Go for it.
I make a motion to approve the variance.
Second.
All in favor?
Is there discussion?
Well,
Aye.
Is there? do you have
I
more?
guess-
Now,
Are we-
friendly amendment
Friendly amendment.
that there be a review at either the annexation and completion of the MUD or 50% completion of the development at the request of the developer.
At the request of the developer?
Correct. The develop, well, like the MUD, I guess. I don't know who's the principal. Is it the MUD that's driving this? That's utilities. Where's
Right,
the
so
development?
it depends on the moment in time. Right, so if you're at 50%, it's still in control of the developer. By the time it's built out and the debt is paid, it's likely to the MUD board.
Yeah, I think that's right. So
Yeah.
at completion of the MUD at annexation of the MUD or 50% completion of the development, the gate arm is to be reviewed.
So really quick so I can understand that amendment.
Yeah.
Because then I would anyone could choose to motion with the amendment. Or is that amendment to my motion, so I have to accept that motion?
I think there has to be a vote for that to take place. So we as a group have to vote to add that to the
Yes, we want the variance, but you.
No, we're not voting on the variance yet. We're voting on whether or
On
not
the
to
amendment.
include the amendment.
Oh,
So
Well, we can just let the previous motion die and just start a new motion that includes that if you want. It's fine either way.
It's been a hot minute since I did a true parliamentary meeting, and I've seen
So
it go
there'd be
two
a-
different ways.
A vote on the friendly amendments, and if that dies, then the
Then what-
ranking motion
There's a vote to
continues
include
on.
That's what I'm used to.
the amendment in my motion.
Yeah.
Correct.
That was been seconded.
No,
Okay.
just the amendment first, then.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want to vote?
Oh, sorry. So for
Well, so you-
just so
if-
I can understand what that amendment
Yeah.
is, the 50% complete. I'm just going to regurgitate what I think I just heard because
Yeah.
I'm very unfamiliar with muds. I mean, I've seen mud. So, bad joke. I'm
See
bad.
what you
It's a
did
bad
there.
joke. I'm so sorry. I
It's a
know
good
it's been
dad
a
joke.
long meeting,
It's a
y'all.
good dad
I'm
joke.
sorry.
And it's very hot in here. Wait a minute.
So the reason why you're saying 50% completion of the development is because at that point the ownership switches from the developer to the
No.
mud.
So the mud is a district that's designed for utility infrastructure to be
Okay.
created and installed
Okay.
without the city having to take the debt, right? So the debt is issued by the mud
Because they're not in the
because they're not in the city yet. So then once the mud, so that's the mud is the underground, right? Once the mud is 100% complete and the debt's paid off, then traditionally, once those are paid off, then the city automatically absorbs the ownership of those debted utilities,
Okay.
right? So that's the mud. That's below ground.
Yeah.
Developer is above ground. Builders are taller than that, right? The houses, right? But once it reaches 50%,
Okay.
then theoretically, 50% sold, right? 50% complete.
They should be out
Then
of
that
debt.
means there should be
Oh.
300-ish homes in that neighborhood. So there's theoretically 300 times 1.68 or whatever the IRS, how many people live in a house, or 2.8 or whatever it is. That many people living in there that theoretically would be better served with additional access through this.
Okay, so yours is a completion related to amount of people within the area, not the annexation portion of this. It's like two separate.
I think this is more
items.
complicated than we're going to be able to get into,
I think you should just
and there's
do it
too many. Can you rephrase your amendment not to include percent completion? Can it just be upon? Can it just be upon annexation?
Well, I mean, so the reason that the 50% is that trigger would be issued by the developer who still has the remaining development sites to do, right? And the reason that they're the ones that own the land that hasn't been sold yet, the lots that haven't been sold yet. But they've already sold 300 or so lots to other people. But the likelihood that the HOA and the entities will be able to get together and make the decision is lower compared to dealing with the developer who has already provided home sites for theoretically 300.
Is there
Well, I
an
think
attorney
the-
here tonight?
but
Because I
the-
don't think this could be binding anyway.
I think the problem with that though is now you're just talking about removing the gate in a couple of years. I don't know what the build out time frame is. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So it buys the current property owners maybe a couple of years of
Probably lower than that.
of nothing. Might be longer than that, but
Right.
either way, you know what I'm saying. So
Well,
in that case, why would
So
we
what I'm-
just
what-
delay that?
What I'm
if they-
attempting to solve is the Aspire 2040 plan, which is committed,
Yeah.
connectivity,
Yeah.
but also providing the time for the developer to put in their infrastructure and it's still a cornfield, so it's not even ready for that stuff yet. So that's years away before the first site is developed, right? But then once there's a sufficient number of people residing in the development, at a certain point, those people will be better served by more connectivity, right? And so,
And it'd be better if frogs had wings and didn't bump their butts when they hopped, but we
No,
don't
I
have
agree with
this
that.
level of control on a waiver request.
Yeah, I mean, I get the trying to thread the
I get what
needle,
you're trying
but it
to
feels like
do,
in
but-
the end, the goal is still to have connectivity. It's just a matter of, well, to your point, it's not going to happen in the next few years anyway.
right, but if
By
there's
the time that section gets built out.
if there's a gate that gets put in, and there's no mechanism for it to be removed,
Right.
then there's a gate there theoretically forever,
Yeah.
right? Which does not align with
Right.
Aspire 2040 nor the work that we've done here for years, right? And so I think that's where I'm trying to manage that is that I recognize that
So then maybe your amendment would have to be the connectivity does not have to be opened until 50% completion.
Well, no, what I was suggesting was just a review.
Otherwise, well, yeah, see, it wouldn't. It wouldn't come back, right?
Depends.
More than likely, I wouldn't want to place that back, right?
Well, at some point, right, there, we hope at some point that it's 50% sold, or it's been occupied long enough that all the bonds are paid off. That's the ultimate hope, right? Is that it's fully developed, there's people living
But
there.
if we're waiting for that, then that's, 35 years from
Okay,
now.
we're the
to
Planning
end.
and Zoning Commission, so I just want to remind us all that what we have the ability to do is make a recommendation to the City Council on whether to approve or deny the waiver. That's what we can do.
Just for clarification, this waiver stops here.
Oh, it stops here, so we aren't making a recommendation to council. We get to make
They
this
have the
decision.
ability to appeal your determination to City Council, but on subdivision waivers,
Okay,
final authority.
that's helpful.
It's just
Thank
a
you.
UDC
Sorry about that.
override, basically, yeah.
So do we have the authority to put any future requirements on it to be reviewed again?
Not had that question come up before, and just kind of
This is the first gate.
yes, first gate. So when I think about it, I think
gate.
I think just about our ability to know that
Right.
and remember that
Right.
that's there, and when you look at 50% sold or those kind of things, those aren't things the city sees, right? We see completion, we see annexation requests. Those are permitted applications that come through the review process. I think if that was the path you wanted to go down, I would say add it to the annexation of the MUD versus a 50% completion or sold, because that doesn't go through any city process for us to even know or for it to be triggered. Now, that's not to say that the developer won't raise that, but it's a big development. Is it all of Lakeside Mud 5? Are we thinking of sections 1 through 6? And so there's just a lot of variables, I think, with that particular.
So I think that's fair, and I would be happy to strike the 50% component, but I think there needs to be a mechanism for the gate to be removed, whether it's 5 years from now or 45 years from now. Because what we don't want is a situation where, and by the way, so in that case, then it would be an automatic removal the moment the annexation.
Make the amendment be for annexation.
Yeah.
Have it be
So
revisited
upon
upon
annexation of the development and the MUD, then the gate comes down.
it comes back to count, or
No,
whatever
I
we
would
have the
say-
authority to do.
I guess, is it
At that-
worthwhile to do that, though? For practical purposes,
Is what
they're going to be, these neighborhoods are going to be disconnected for the next 40 years. Like, does that amendment actually give us anything? Looking that far in the future when this is all fully
the
built
pavement's
out,
going into the ground. It'll be there for in the future. There's 11 houses that we're connecting. If Row Lane weren't going in, I'd feel very differently. But Row Lane is going in, and so the connectivity that you need to get in and out of the neighborhood of 600 is going to be there, and the ability of emergency services to get in and out of Gate Dancer is going to be better than it is today. I also don't know, is anybody still debating, or do we all know how we want to vote?
Oh, no, I know.
Okay, we've got a lot to go through for the rest of tonight. So, what was your amendment?
So we're going to vote first. So I'll strike the 50% component. So my amendment would be, upon annexation of the MUD, the gate is removed.
Okay. I accept that amendment.
Okay.
That's a way better one than 5 years.
Okay.
It's only valid under certain conditions, but I'll answer for
Or
it.
it's only valid as long as the MUD is in existence. Because once the bonds are paid off, the MUD theoretically.
We're relying on the
Is there any way to come back later on, say 10 years, the residents
my
are like,
God.
gosh, I want to do this. There's just not
They
another
can,
variance?
if the residents can come at any time.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
oh, well, then do you really need the safe hold of the amendment?
in
Can we
40
just
years from now,
vote?
potentially. Well, because I mean, like the issue that we ran into historically with other things is things that happened 35 years ago.
Yes.
And then it comes to this group, and we're like, wait a minute, none of us were here for that. Why is that the way? Why is that the case? And so I think that.
Okay, the annexation. I get it. I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah. So I think once, I happily amend, my amendment, my friendly amendment to
Here,
state
within
that
your
once the MUD is fully annexed, and the gate is removed, and that becomes a fully pass-through street.
Can I just accept the amendment and make that my motion? Sweet, just like speed it up along?
Yeah.
Okay. So my motion is to approve the variance with the MUD amendment.
Okay.
Annexation amendment.
And this person who seconded, I'm sorry. I didn't
Amanda
catch that.
seconds.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes no as well.
I'm sorry, because of the sound. Was this chair and vice chair?
Chair and vice chair
Commissioner
voted nay. Everybody
I
else said
voted
yay.
Yay?
With my amendment.
Thank
yeah,
you.
With the friendly amendment attached.
With the amendment attached.
And just on a side note, just want to say thank you. This was one of the first times that there's been like a little bit more of a healthy discussion, and I just want to say thank you, everyone, for your expertise and how you approach these discussions. I really appreciate it. That was really great.
Yeah.
I
agreed,
love frank
agreed.
and open discussion. It's
nice.
yeah.
Not for everybody, but it's nice.
I know.
Not for everybody
Sorry
and
to
everyone
everybody,
else,
but it was good for us.
All
feel
right.
good about our answer.
Thank you. Motion carries. Let's go to
Thank you
items.
guys for your time.
Thank you.
Item 6A. All right. All right, up next we have item 6A. Is Brandon here? Oh, all right. To discuss and consider approving the updated water and wastewater master plans.
Let me get us on the right spot on the slide. Gotta figure out if I'm. Sorry, y'all. Oh, we're at the bottom. Alright, sorry, y'all. Got it. Alright. Sorry, y'all. Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Brandon Pritchett. I'm the Utility Director for the city. So to give you all a little bit of history before I introduce Mo to do the bulk of this lifting that I'm not here for, but I'll happily help. So a little bit of history on our water and wastewater master plans. As y'all are probably aware, y'all have seen us every year with updates to our water wastewater master plan. So every year we've come back to y'all with updates that are generally updating costs because the world and construction has been a little crazy for the past 5 years, as I'm sure you're all aware. So we've had to update our costs every year to make sure we stay in line and everybody's up to date on what those costs are for some of our water and wastewater capital plans. The two plans that y'all are seeing this evening are 5-year updates. So the last update that we had for the water and wastewater master plan that looks at modeling, forecasting was completed in 2019 and adopted in 2020. So these are full updates, not just looking at cost and kind of where we're seeing growth over a year, but are more a 5-year update. So with that said, a little bit of history, I'm going to turn it over to Mo, who's going to do the bulk of this presentation. We've got a ton of people here with a lot of expertise that can answer any technical questions you may have, and Jeff and I are both here as well for questions you may have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mo.
Thank you.
Hey y'all, first time here, so don't cut me up too much, but I'm Mo. I'm a project engineer in the utility engineering department. I work with Brandon and Jeff, and I'm here to talk to y'all a little bit more about our water and wastewater master plans. Little title slide. So I'm first going to start with the water master plan overview. Up on the screen we have kind of an overall view of the city and our water infrastructure as it stands today. We have all of the different pressure zones in different colors, and the water master plan serves as a strategic framework for guiding the expansion, optimization, and long-term management of the city's water treatment and distribution systems. So on the outline of the map, you can kind of see in the red dashed line is the city's water CCN, the Certificate of Convenience and Necessity, and the pressure planes. And for these studies, we are analyzing 3 key horizons: 2030, 2035, and ultimate build-out for the city's water infrastructure. So the first thing we started with was kind of analyzing the existing conditions of the system and built a model based on what we already have in the ground and in Pflugerville today. And from there, we worked on moving towards the future and what that development was going to look like. Our consultants used the Aspire 2040 plan to build their projections for the future and what everything was going to look like and the needs of the city looking forward. We coordinated with the planning department in addition with the future land use map to make sure that we were capturing all of the future development in the city, including things that are coming up in the near future. The anticipated need was also calculated using historical billing data and was split by customer type. So you can see on the right-hand side, we have different average daily and max daily flows depending on the property classification. Single family, apartment, and commercial were the three main categories that we looked into. And then there was different designations used on the future land use map. So we had different units per acre for each of the different categories to try to determine what the needs were going to be in the future and what the flows were that we were going to look at for each of the different areas. It was projected that 30% of future development would occur between 2030 and 2035, with the remaining 70% projected to occur post 2035 to build out. So this is kind of a graph showing our connection count over time. We can see that we've gone up pretty steeply in the past couple of years, like 2015 to 2020, and kind of returned back to that steady climb after that. 2025 we had around 16,000 connections, and in 2030 we're projecting closer to 18,000. The 2030 number includes existing connections plus around 1,900 single-family residential units, 10 planned apartment complexes, and 23 commercial developments. And the 2035 projection includes an additional around 3,200 single-family residential units. The estimations of connection count for the new apartment complexes and other commercial developments were not made because we do not have any data on those just yet. But for the ones that are happening in the near future, we have some information on. And then, so for complete build out, the maximum daily demand is projected to be around 27.1 million gallons per day, MGD. So each of these average day demands that you see on the right side are in million gallons per day. The existing demands were calculated using the average of 22 and 23 data. We actually went and talked to the utility billing department and got information from them on how much water customers are using based on development type and area.
Can I ask a real quick question on that? Did you all take into account our weather over those years by chance? Do we know if they're similar enough? I can't remember off the top of my head, right? If it's a heavy drought year versus a normal drought year.
Yeah, so I think that I can't remember, I have notes in here somewhere about, I think 2023 was used for the dry weather, but I think that more comes into play for the wastewater calculations.
Sure. But
our Garver team can tell you more at the end.
Sure, no worries, thank you.
They can get into the weeds with the technical stuff. And then so on here, the black dotted lines are the exponential best fit of the historical average daily and max day demand. The demands are projected to increase at approximately the same rate as they have for the past 20 years through 2035. And then with the development of the model for the system, they were able to kind of implement new pieces of infrastructure or projects to kind of see what we need to do in the future. And that leads us to the water CIP projects that were developed as part of this water master plan. There's a lot of development, as you can see, along the SH-130 corridor, where there's going to be a lot more commercial development and growth coming into the city. And then we also have a big pump station project on SH-45 to help provide water to developments up there as well. There are also other projects such as rehab of existing infrastructure and just making sure that we're able to meet capacity needs in those areas. So here's our wonderful giant list of CIP projects that we have going on right now, the ones that are projected for 2030, and then the 2035 and beyond projects. I'm sure y'all are familiar with a lot of the ones on the 2025 project side. We have a capital subtotal of around $55 million for the 2025 horizon, so that goes from 2025 to 2029. And then for 2030, we have around $47 million, and that would include that SH-45 pump station and a couple of other projects. And then we have a 2035 total horizon of 81 million.
So I do have a question on this. I'm curious if any of these models or projections for full build out includes completion of infill. So we still have, what is it, 30% of the land of Pflugerville, right, is still, west of 130 and could presumably, hopefully, be developed and redeveloped. Are there any projections built into these models to account for not just the aging infrastructure, but potential upgrades in commercial areas and infill parts of town?
So mostly everything here is looking at most infill. So just keep in mind, city limits doesn't match and jive with water CCN. But on the outside of the west side of town in Windermere, most of the city limits is generally our water CCN. So all of these areas are considering infill within that service area because the infill, the SH-130 corridor, or I say the corridor west and east of SH-130, where it's kind of vacant right now. That infill would happen there, so it accounts for that infill, and the land use is according to the same land use that's already been adopted by this board.
Okay, so the land use would
match
basically
exactly
cover that.
What the Aspire 2040 plan calls for, and now if that changes, obviously we have to be able to pivot with it.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, the Aspire 2040 land use map is what the studies were based on.
Okay.
And then now we're going to move on to the wastewater master plan. Let me catch up on the notes.
I'm guessing we'll have discussion after the full presentation.
Yeah, at the end we have a slide for questions, and they are much more in the weeds on all of the details, so whatever technical questions you'll have, we got you.
You did a great job.
Okay, so moving on to the wastewater master plan, this is just kind of a general overview of the wastewater CCN in the city of Pflugerville. We have the 4 main basins, the Central, Wilbarger, Cottonwood West, and Cottonwood East basins. Obviously, the wastewater CCN is a lot larger than the water CCN, as y'all saw from the previous slides. So there's a lot more going on the wastewater side. This map shows the future development projections. It is color coded based on the horizon that it's associated with. So for red is 2025 to 2030 future identified plan developments. The blue is for future identified plan developments from 2030 to 2035, and then undeveloped and not planned areas 2035 to build out, and that's in green. So the land use types were also taken from the Aspire 2040 future land use map to interpret what we needed to do for this. And growth projections were developed to estimate the future wastewater connection counts. The wastewater flow projections for 2025, 2030, and 2035 and build out were calculated using historical flow data and flow meter data. So I will skip to the next slide, and STV projected a design flow of around 250 gallons per connection per day. So on this chart, I know it's got a lot of data on it, but we used the land use to kind of assume the number of connections and then the total flows that would come from each of those connections. So you can see the average day flow demand on the second to right column. And you can see as time goes on, there's more growth going on in the further west basins as the city moves more, not west, further east basins as the city grows more towards the east in the undeveloped areas. And then moving on to the CIP projects, the entire system was also modeled for the wastewater. They included gravity mains, force mains, lift stations, and other wastewater items. The model included current conditions and then also projected the future flows. The city's design criteria was applied to evaluate the system performance and identify capacity issues and system constraints, which is what they use to develop the future CIP projects. And then we have this huge list of future wastewater CIP projects. They are color coded based on the horizon. So everything in yellow is the ongoing projects that we're currently working on. Everything in kind of like the light red is the 2025 to 2030. And then moving to the next slide, blue is 2030 to 2035, and green is 2035 to build out, which also corresponds back to that first map. So you can kind of look and see where each of these are happening. And then, so for as far as timeline goes, we're meeting with y'all here today, and our goal is to go to the August 26th first reading at City Council, and then go for the second reading at City Council September 9th, 2025. So now I will summon everyone for questions. If y'all want to come up.
Thank you.
Heather.
I can grab the podium. Okay. Thank you. We're all here to happy to answer any questions y'all may have. A big change that I did want to note is the 2019-2020 water and wastewater master plans were, we would say they're fairly conservative, in the fact that fairly conservative in flows, and also there was a mantra before that there was a lot of outpacing of growth for water, that we would have a lot of extra water service area that we are not planning to take over. So you'll note a very large decrease in kind of our water demand. We're not planning to take over the we're not looking to take over the water world and serve everybody with water. So there was a big push before with having to possibly take over some of these areas that are currently served by other water entities. We're not looking to do that, and some of these we're saying stay within our CCN. Take these as one-offs. Don't plan to take over the world with our water service area, right? So, so there's a liability to that we don't obviously want to plan to take over. So, but yes, we're all here to answer questions. We have Garver, STV, myself, Mo, Jeff. We've got a whole group of people here to answer any questions y'all may have.
Usage benchmarking for the water master plan. If I'm reading it correctly, we're assuming quite a bit higher usage than the surrounding cities have shown in their plans. Am I reading that correctly?
Ours per capita, and somebody from Garver can tell me if I'm wrong. I thought ours was lower. Ours is lower than our surrounding communities.
Maybe I'm misreading that. I was in table 2.3. It looked like our average usage per connection was in like the 200s, and the other cities were in the mid 100s.
I thought it was our GPCD. I thought it was like 86. I think you're maybe looking at peak day usage. Or maybe.
Per capita versus per connection?
Yeah, capita per capita versus per connection.
But you guys can confirm that our projections are in line with similar usage.
They're more correct, and they follow more with like what we're seeing for water conservation and what we're pushing out there for water conservation. We're not just saying everybody water all day.
When the water got more expensive.
Of course.
That they can go down quite a bit.
The 219 was for a single family connection, so that's more than one person.
More than one person. So average family of 2.8 per connection, not per person.
That must be where I was making that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would say that if we're talking about doing infill and we're talking about future development, I would imagine less water usage than we've had historically, and especially as water is getting more expensive, people are going to find ways to cut back. So I just want to make sure we're not really over projecting and trying to build out all this infrastructure that we may not need for longer durations. But
correct, right? We don't want to project out. Hey, we're going to need 75 million gallons per day if we're only going to need 30, right? And so I think we're trying to kind of recalibrate ourselves from the 2019-2020 and kind of recalibrate ourselves like what we're seeing, that we're not taking over the water world to serve everybody water all the time. So okay, makes sense.
Do you have any related to the former plans of taking over the water world? Do Do you have any, and I'm not going to hold you to a specific number, but do you know how much of an impact that had in the plan? I would imagine it's pretty substantial.
I mean, it really did project our water treatment plant to expand all the way up to 75 million gallons per day.
Oh, okay.
So that's not I didn't pull that number out of nowhere.
Yeah, right.
So, and also wastewater too, right? So, so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it of course, informs your decisions over 5 years, right? So instead of redoing, full-on plans. So it informs your decisions, but it also, impacts a little bit, but we still have to serve certain developments that come in along that area regardless.
I had one other related question, then I'll turn it over again. Actually, not related at all. But I wanted to ask whether or not this has been overlaid with our contracts or commitments on actual water sourcing from LCRA and those commitments.
So we know we're currently a little bit of history with all the info. So our LCRA contract is 24,000 acre feet per year. So 24,000 acre feet per year. We've looked at it from a standpoint. I believe our max build out would be 20-ish thousand acre feet per year. Don't quote me on the full number on that. I believe it's mentioned in the master plan. If not, I know we looked at it independently. So it's looked at from our raw water supply contracts, as well as kind of what our current wholesale contracts are. So we currently have 2 wholesale contracts, water supply contracts, that will expire. One's in 10 years, we just renewed it, and the other one is in 2038, June or January 2038.
Gotcha. Are there opportunities, see now you just opened up for even more questions, are there opportunities for additional wholesale agreements, you think, or
Sure, we have to stay within our river basin, right?
Yeah.
So we have to stay within our river basin, so I can't go to Round Rock, hypothetically, right? If I go to Williamson County, I can't sell that water up there without some weird agreements. That's fun. It depends on who needs water and how how the state plays out from like a water politics point of view, right? If it becomes more and more treacherous to import water from like East Texas, it may be more advantageous to keep it within the river basin, which may mean our wholesale contracts get expanded accordingly.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of factors in play from water wars across the state, so it kind of depends. As it currently stands, it would depend on who our immediate east, south, and west neighbors are, how needy they are for water.
Yeah.
So, possibly.
Cool. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask a question about something I don't fully understand, so be patient with me. I know we hear it a lot in Pflugerville about how expensive our water is. An assumption I would have, and this is me speaking fully from assumptions because I do not understand how rates are calculated. It's related to infrastructure, a portion of it, like paying for infrastructure in the future. So to the questions that I think some of the other folks have been asking related to how those rates are calculated, conservative, numbers possibly, is with the reality of the rates in Pflugerville and the impact that it's having on affordability within Pflugerville, has there been any reevaluation of, some of the rate calculations? It's obviously guiding the way the capital improvement plan is turning out with certain investments for future development that could be possibly projecting something more conservative than reality. So I think that I don't remember who asked the question about looking at adjacent cities to see how our projections kind of align with those. Is it too conservative? So yeah, I just didn't know if you had any thoughts you could share related to that.
Absolutely. I always have an opinion, good or bad or ugly. So we evaluate rates, wastewater rates every year. So we go through, we evaluate how much debt we've taken on, how much our capital projects have progressed, how much we've spent, whether we've got it through WIFIA program, the TWD program, however we're getting that funding. So we'll project it out 5 years, but then every year we're coming back and reevaluating what have we spent, what have we not spent. But as it looks at capital and rates, wastewater is looking at 3 projects. I mean, just to be blunt, there's a lot of capital in the future that we have, but in the grand scheme, they are minuscule in comparison to the 3 projects we're doing right now that are actively in construction. We've got the water treatment plant expansion that's currently ongoing, the Wilbarger wastewater treatment plant that's currently under construction, and the raw water pipeline that's currently under construction. those three projects drive $500 million just in capital costs, just with those three in construction. So we look at rates every year, but we're also looking at how we're spending that money, and we're spending that debt, what bids have come in at compared to what our estimates are, and then how we're funding those, whether we're doing it lower interest loans. But it also, the rate is driven by how much debt we're issuing, and the biggest driver of that debt are those three projects that are currently ongoing. So as that debt service ramps up, as those projects come online, the construction is finishing. But as these other projects in the future kind of come online, there's a smaller and smaller impact compared to those three, right? So if I have three projects of $500 million, and I'd have to go back a few slides, but if you have 5 years of $80 million total, the net impact on a rate is obviously much smaller in comparison to a $500 million. And then as your connections grow over time, that rate becomes small. That rate increase becomes smaller and smaller. Does that answer your question or explain it, or did I do okay in that explanation?
Yeah, no, I think that was a great explanation. And I mean, being on planning and zoning, we're here to kind of learn more. And ask questions that we know. I mean, we all know those questions are being asked in the community pretty often. It's a pretty hot topic.
Of course.
And it directly impacts, affordability within Pflugerville. So I was just wanting to take this opportunity maybe to learn a little bit more about that. And I look forward to Pflugerville providing more and more thoughts and ideas to hopefully reduce that rate over time, because it is significantly higher than any of the surrounding areas. But I understand we are making and needing to make investments that those surrounding areas aren't having to make right now.
And
so I appreciate that.
If I can add on to that too, it's also important to know, because we live in this world right all day, so we know everybody's business. So it's important to note, so Georgetown has $1.95 billion 5-year CIP in water and wastewater. Round Rock's last capital projects that they did and fully funded themselves was in early 2000s, right? So large capital that what we're doing right now. So you look at it's hard to compare surrounding cities when you look at kind of what their growth is. So Cedar Park they're kind of encapsulated. There's no build out in their water wastewater. Leander's got this really big CIP, but they're lucky enough to where they're in a river basin to share costs, whereas we can't share costs in the same way because our neighbors are Manville Water Supply Corporation, Windermere Texas Water Utilities, and the City of Austin. So there's not as much wiggle room to share the same way that Leander does, but also other cities have invested super early in a whole lot of very expensive capital, and we're able to get out way ahead of it, which makes it really popular now, but probably 20 years ago it wasn't as popular, similar to what we're doing right now. So it's fun to kind of see how, I say fun, it's interesting to see how other cities are funding it, and then we also see the future for other cities that are spending are about to invest a whole lot of money into water and wastewater as well in our surrounding area that haven't had that rate impact yet. So
thank you. Thanks for giving us a lesson. I know it's a late meeting, so I appreciate the lesson.
I'm always happy to talk about this. This is my passion in life, so love it.
Do you have any others? Do you have so I don't have questions. I have one super nitpicky thing I feel silly bringing up, but I had to Google MGD. I think it's million gallons a day.
Correct.
So double check thank you for the table of acronyms on the first or second page. It was super helpful. Do another run through before you take it to council to make sure you caught them all, because MGD wasn't in there. That was a super technical document, and I was a liberal arts major, and thank you for the amount of work that you guys put into the summary pages, because I was able to kind of get the big picture, and then you did. It was so very took me back to grad school for policy though, because it was very and here's our method in design, and here's the summary in our abstract, and then you get into the meat of it. So I really appreciated that. I was able to follow it, even though I'm not in any stretch of the imagination an engineer, and I'm glad we have two engineers here. But very obviously a lot of work went into it, and I've been on the council or on the commission for a long time. I appreciate your enthusiasm and how you explain water to us. And my husband was actually wondering something about Pflugerville water, and I was like, oh, I know the answer to that, and you should totally watch the planning and zoning when the water comes. So thank you all for your work.
Thank you.
Check your acronyms.
And just to follow up, but it came to me. The document is very technical, and I agree. It's really nice, even though I have an engineering background. It's not in like wastewater design, so I found the summary pages to be very helpful as well. And just a thought or suggestion I would want to offer is, to my question on utilities, someone who read the document and is in these meetings. I had questions, so I think it would be really strategic and smart for maybe there'd be something that goes to like that can be referenced by folks within Pflugerville that have that same question that I have, and then maybe can link to certain portions of the master plan to just something to help. Because even as I've been curious about the subject, even as I've looked at like community impact, it's more of about just the rates in general and not really talking about what you just did, which was a really quick lesson, but it gave me a different level of understanding as to why maybe it isn't appropriate to compare to other surrounding areas, or what are some of the challenges and restrictions. I would highly recommend that there is a resource like that for community members, because if there is one, I wasn't able to find it when I've looked for it. So thank you.
Yeah, we can do that.
Possibly a video of him, just saying.
We'll have to condense it down, and we'll edit it.
I know
really
it's a little scary to make something that because people could nitpick at it, when it is a contentious subject, but I feel like sometimes they're not being able to find the information just leads to people filling in the gaps with their own narrative, more than just giving folks the info and the way of connecting the dots, and then just letting them nitpick that as they're going to, which they will. They'll do it with or without the info, honestly. So I think it would be very, very helpful to have something that provides a little bit more clarity.
We can do that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really awesome document.
Yeah. We can entertain a motion to recommend that this moves forward to council.
Motion to approve?
Second?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate all the hard work, team. And that concludes this evening's meeting. We are adjourned at 8:56.